The doctors told her it was impossible. Her own son said it was unforgivable. At 70 years old, Paulina Reeves became the oldest woman in the country to give birth to twins. And for that miracle, she lost everything. Welcome back to another extraordinary story that will challenge your understanding of family, sacrifice, and unconditional love. Before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you never miss our newest uploads. Paulina Reeves had always been extraordinary, though not in ways the world typically noticed. Born in 1950 to working-class parents in a small Midwestern town, she'd spent her life putting others first. She married young, just 19, to her high school sweetheart Thomas, and gave birth to their only son Daniel when she was 23. When Thomas passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack 15 years ago, Paulina had thrown herself into being both mother and father to Daniel, who was then 32 and building his career as an architect. She'd never remarried, focusing instead on supporting her son's dreams, helping him and his wife Olivia with their 2 children, and volunteering at the local children's hospital. By all accounts, at 70 years old, Paulina had settled comfortably into the role society expected of her: the doting grandmother, the helpful mother-in-law, the pillar of her community who served on 3 different charity boards and never missed Sunday service at First Methodist Church. It began with fatigue, then dizziness, then a strange fullness in her abdomen that Paulina initially attributed to the stress of planning her granddaughter Emily's 10th birthday party. When she finally made an appointment with Dr. Whitman, her physician of 30 years, she expected to hear that she needed to cut back on sodium or perhaps start a new medication. What she didn't expect was the stunned silence as Dr. Whitman stared at her test results, then at her, then back at the papers in his hand. "Paulina," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper, "I need to run these tests again. There must be some mistake." But there was no mistake. 3 blood tests and 2 ultrasounds later, Dr. Whitman sat across from Paulina in his office, his expression a mixture of shock and professional concern. "Paulina, I've been practicing medicine for nearly 4 decades and I've never seen anything like this," he began. "According to every test we've run, you're pregnant with twins." The room seemed to tilt sideways. Paulina gripped the arms of her chair. "That's impossible," she said. "I'm 70 years old. I went through menopause 20 years ago." Dr. Whitman nodded. "Medically speaking, you're right. It should be impossible, but we've confirmed it multiple ways. You're approximately 14 weeks pregnant with twins. The ultrasound shows 2 healthy fetuses." "But how?" Paulina whispered. "There have been extremely rare cases of women experiencing what's called spontaneous reactivation of ovarian function after menopause, coupled with," he paused delicately, "intimate relations. A pregnancy could occur, but I've never seen it in medical literature in a woman of your age, and certainly not with twins." Paulina's mind whirled back to 6 months ago, to Richard. They'd met at a grief support group for seniors who had lost their spouses. He was kind, gentle, with a poet's soul and an architect's precision, so like her Thomas in some ways, yet entirely his own person. For 3 beautiful months, they'd found in each other a second chance at companionship, at tenderness, at love. Then Richard had suffered a massive stroke. He'd been gone before Paulina could even reach the hospital. 2 losses in one lifetime seemed too much to bear. But now, sitting in Dr. Whitman's office, Paulina realized that Richard had left her something neither of them could have possibly imagined. "Paulina," Dr. Whitman's voice broke through her thoughts, "I have to be honest with you. This pregnancy carries extremely serious risks. At your age, the strain on your heart, your bones, your entire system, not to mention the significant risks to the fetuses themselves." He leaned forward, his expression grave. "I strongly recommend we discuss termination options. The risks to your health are..." "No." The word came out before Paulina had even processed her own thoughts. She placed a hand on her abdomen, feeling a sudden, fierce protectiveness she hadn't experienced since she'd first felt Daniel move inside her nearly 50 years ago. "These babies are Richard's last gift to me," she said, her voice growing stronger. "They're a miracle. I can't give them up." Dr. Whitman sighed. "I was afraid you might say that. If you're determined to continue with this pregnancy, we'll need to assemble a specialized medical team immediately. You'll need to be monitored constantly. There will be bed rest, medications, possibly hospitalization in the later stages." Paulina nodded, her mind already racing ahead. She would need to tell Daniel. Her son had always been protective of her, especially since Thomas died. He checked on her daily, insisted she move to a single-story home 3 years ago when her knees started bothering her, brought her groceries every Sunday without fail, and now she would tell him that at 70, she was bringing 2 new lives into the world. Lives she might not live long enough to raise to adulthood. As she left Dr. Whitman's office that day, Paulina felt the weight of the world on her shoulders, yet paradoxically, a lightness in her heart she hadn't felt in decades. She was going to be a mother again. Against all odds, against all reason, she had been given a second chance. That evening, Paulina sat in her small garden, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Her hand rested on her stomach, which showed no outward sign of the miracle occurring within. She thought of Daniel, of how to tell him. He had always been a practical man like his father. He valued order, predictability, plans carefully made and executed. This news would upend everything he thought he knew about his mother, about their future, about his own responsibilities. Paulina's cell phone rang. Daniel's name flashed on the screen. "Hey, Mom," his cheerful voice greeted her. "Just checking in. Did you make it to the doctor today? Everything okay with your blood pressure?" Paulina took a deep breath. "Daniel, I need to talk to you and Olivia. Can you come over tomorrow night? It's important." A pause. "Mom, what's wrong? Did the doctor find something?" "Nothing's wrong," she said, and was surprised to realize she meant it. Despite the medical risks, despite the uncertainty, despite everything, this didn't feel wrong. "It's just something I need to tell you in person." She could hear the worry in his voice as he agreed, then insisted on bringing dinner so she wouldn't have to cook, always taking care of her, always the responsible one. As she hung up, Paulina gazed at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "Richard," she whispered to the night, "what am I supposed to do?" The stars offered no answer, but as a gentle breeze rustled through her garden, Paulina felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. Whatever came next, whatever Daniel's reaction might be, she would face it with the same strength that had carried her through 70 years of life's joys and sorrows. These babies were her miracle, and like all miracles, they would require faith, courage, and love beyond measure. The following evening, Paulina's modest living room felt unusually small as Daniel and Olivia settled onto her floral sofa. They'd brought Italian food from her favorite restaurant, and the scent of garlic bread and marinara sauce filled the air. Under different circumstances, it would have been a perfect family dinner. Daniel, tall and broad-shouldered like his father had been, looked at Paulina with concern in his eyes. At 47, his dark hair had begun showing touches of silver at the temples, making him look distinguished and mature. Beside him, Olivia, ever practical in her nurse's sensibility, studied Paulina with a professional gaze. "Mom, you're scaring us," Daniel said after they'd served the food that no one was eating. "Whatever it is, we can handle it together. Is it cancer? Heart problems?" Paulina shook her head, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "It's not what you think," she began. "I'm not sick, at least not in the way you're worried about." She took a deep breath. "There's no easy way to say this, so I'll just say it. I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was absolute. Daniel's fork clattered onto his plate. Olivia's mouth opened, then closed without a sound. Daniel recovered first, a nervous laugh escaping him. "Mom, that's not possible. You're 70 years old." "I know my age, Daniel," Paulina said quietly. "Dr. Whitman ran the tests 3 times. I'm 14 weeks pregnant, with twins." Olivia, with her medical background, found her voice. "Paulina, postmenopausal pregnancies are extremely rare, and at 70, she trailed off, her professional demeanor momentarily failing her. "Richard," Paulina said simply. "It happened with Richard before he died." Daniel stood up abruptly, pacing the small living room. "Richard, the man you dated for 3 months? The one you met at that grief group?" "Yes." "And you were intimate with him?" Daniel's face flushed with embarrassment and something like anger. Paulina felt a flare of indignation. "I was married for 35 years, Daniel. I'm not a child. Yes, Richard and I were intimate. We cared deeply for each other." Daniel ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father that it made Paulina's heart ache. This is insane, Mom. Even if this pregnancy is somehow real, you can't possibly be considering going through with it." "I am," Paulina said firmly. "I've made my decision. You'll die." Daniel's voice rose, fear making him harsh. "Do you understand that? The strain on your heart alone could kill you, not to mention everything else. And then what? 2 orphaned infants? Is that what you want?" Olivia placed a calming hand on her husband's arm. "Daniel," she said softly, then turned to Paulina. "What Paulina's saying is medically possible, just extremely rare, but he's right about the risks. They're substantial." "I know the risks," Paulina said. "Dr. Whitman explained everything, but these babies are my choice, my responsibility." Daniel's face darkened. "Your responsibility? What about your responsibility to me, to Emily and Max, your grandchildren who already exist and love you? What about them?" "This doesn't change how much I love all of you," Paulina insisted. "Doesn't it?" Daniel shot back. "You're willing to risk your life for what? Some fantasy of starting over? Some last grasp at youth? The accusation stung. That's not fair, Daniel. That's not what this is about. Then what is it about, Mom? Explain it to me, because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've lost your mind. Paulina felt tears threatening, but held them back. These babies are a miracle, Daniel. Richard's last gift to me. I didn't ask for this, didn't expect it, but now that it's happened, I can't turn my back on them. Daniel shook his head, his expression a mixture of disbelief and betrayal. And what happens after they're born? Have you thought about that? You'll be 71 with newborn twins. How will you physically manage? What happens when they're 5 and you're 76? 10 and you're 81? If you even live that long? I'll figure it out, Paulina said, though in truth, she hadn't thought that far ahead. People will help. There are options. Options? Daniel's voice rose again. You mean me? You expect me to raise your babies when you can't anymore? Is that the plan? I haven't asked you to do that, Paulina said quietly. You didn't have to, Daniel exploded. It's implied. Who else would do it? I'm your only child, your only family. Olivia intervened again, her voice calm but strained. Let's all take a breath. This is a shock for everyone. She turned to Paulina. Have you considered all the angles here? The financial aspect alone. Prenatal care for a high-risk pregnancy like this will be extremely expensive. I have savings, Paulina said. The money from selling the house when your father died. My pension. The money that was supposed to help support you in your old age, Daniel said bitterly. The inheritance that was meant to help Emily and Max with college someday. And there it was. The unspoken reality laid bare. Paulina felt a chill run through her. This wasn't just about her health or the baby's future. It was about the disruption to the carefully ordered life Daniel had planned, including the financial security he'd counted on. I never promised you an inheritance, Daniel, she said softly. That money is mine to use as I need to. For reckless decisions that will probably kill you? He shot back. Daniel! Olivia admonished, shocked, but Daniel was beyond reason now, hurt and fear making him cruel. Do you have any idea how selfish this is? How irresponsible? How embarrassing? The last word hung in the air between them. Embarrassing. That was at the heart of it. What would people think of a 70-year-old woman having babies? What would his friends say? His colleagues? I'm sorry you feel that way, Paulina said, her voice steady despite the pain in her heart. But my decision is made. I'm having these babies, Daniel. I hope you can find it in your heart to support me, but if not, I understand. Daniel stared at her as if she were a stranger. If you do this, he said slowly, if you choose these babies over your own family, over your own well-being, then I don't know who you are anymore. He stood, grabbing his jacket. Come on, Olivia. We're leaving. Olivia hesitated, looking torn between her husband and her mother-in-law. Daniel, please, let's talk this through. There's nothing to talk about. She's made her choice. He turned to Paulina one last time, his eyes filled with hurt and anger. When you come to your senses, call us. Until then, I can't watch you destroy yourself. With that, he stormed out. Olivia lingered, placing a gentle hand on Paulina's shoulder. He's just shocked, she said softly. Give him time. And Paulina, please consider what he said about the risks. As a nurse, I've seen high-risk pregnancies in women half your age go terribly wrong. Paulina nodded, too numb to speak. After Olivia left, following Daniel to their car, Paulina sat alone in her living room, uneaten food growing cold on the coffee table. She placed both hands on her stomach, feeling only the slight roundness that might have been mistaken for the natural softening of age, rather than new life. It's just us now, she whispered to the twins growing inside her. But we'll be okay, somehow. The weeks that followed were the loneliest of Paulina's life. Daniel didn't call, didn't visit. When she tried reaching out to him, her calls went straight to voicemail. Her text messages received no reply. Through Olivia, who occasionally checked in out of professional concern and genuine affection, Paulina learned that Daniel had forbidden her grandchildren from visiting. He's worried about upsetting them, Olivia explained apologetically, and he doesn't want them asking questions he doesn't know how to answer. Meanwhile, Paulina's pregnancy progressed. Her body, remarkably resilient despite its 7 decades, adapted to the growing life within. Dr. Whitman had referred her to a team of high-risk pregnancy specialists at the University Hospital 40 miles away, where she now spent most of her days undergoing tests, receiving monitoring, and listening to lectures about the dangers she faced. Your blood pressure is concerning, Dr. Rahman, the lead specialist, told her during her 20-week checkup, and your bone density scans show significant osteoporosis. The weight of the pregnancy could lead to fractures in your pelvis or spine. Paulina nodded, having heard these warnings before. But the babies are healthy? Dr. Rahman's expression softened. Yes, remarkably so. Both fetuses are developing normally. Would you like to know their genders? Tears sprang to Paulina's eyes as she nodded. A boy and a girl, the doctor said, pointing to the ultrasound screen. Both right on track for growth and development. A son and a daughter. Richard's son and daughter. Paulina felt a surge of love so powerful it took her breath away. That evening, alone in her quiet house, Paulina began talking to her neighbors. First to Mrs. Patterson next door, a retired school teacher who had always been kind to Paulina. Then to the young couple across the street who had a newborn of their own. To her church group, to the volunteers she worked with at the children's hospital. The reactions were mixed. Shock, concern, judgment from some, but also offers of help, of support, of meals and baby clothes and late-night company when the twins would inevitably keep her awake. "It takes a village," Mrs. Patterson said, squeezing Paulina's hand. "And you've spent your whole life being part of this village for others. Now it's our turn." Word spread quickly in their small community. The stairs were difficult. In the grocery store, at church, at her doctor's appointments. People whispered behind their hands when they thought she couldn't hear. An elderly pregnancy was fodder for gossip, for judgment, for moral pronouncements from people who had never faced such an extraordinary circumstance. But Paulina held her head high. She bought a journal and began writing in it each night, addressing her words to her unborn children, explaining who she was, who their father had been, why she had made the choice to bring them into the world despite everything. "Your brother Daniel is a good man," she wrote one evening. "He is hurt and afraid right now, but someday he will understand. Someday he will love you as I already do." As her pregnancy advanced into the third trimester, Paulina's body began to show the strain. Her back ached constantly. Her ankles swelled until she could barely walk. Her blood pressure rose dangerously, forcing Dr. Rahman to put her on strict bed rest. "We need to schedule a C-section," he told her at 32 weeks. "We can't risk letting this pregnancy go to term. The strain on your system is too great." Paulina agreed, recognizing the wisdom in his words, even as she worried about her babies being born prematurely. The night before her scheduled C-section, Paulina sat in the nursery she had prepared with the help of her neighbors. 2 cribs, lovingly assembled by Mr. Johnson from across the street. A rocking chair, a gift from her church group, tiny clothes folded neatly in the dresser, some new, some donated by families whose children had outgrown them. On the wall hung a framed photograph of Richard, his kind eyes seeming to look directly at her. Beside it, a family portrait taken 3 years ago. Paulina, Daniel, Olivia, and the grandchildren at Christmas. "Your family," Paulina whispered, touching her swollen belly. "All of them are your family, even if they don't know it yet." She picked up her phone, scrolling to Daniel's number. Her finger hovered over the call button. Tomorrow she would undergo major surgery. Tomorrow her babies would be born, likely to spend weeks in the NICU due to their prematurity. There was a chance, a small but real chance, that she might not survive the operation. Shouldn't her son know? Didn't he deserve the chance to say goodbye just in case? But as she stared at his number, Paulina remembered the anger in his eyes, the finality in his voice. "When you come to your senses, call us," he'd said. In his mind, having these babies was proof she'd lost her senses entirely. With a heavy heart, Paulina set the phone aside. Instead, she picked up her journal and wrote one final entry before the birth. "My dearest children," she began, "tomorrow you will enter this world, and my greatest regret is that your family is divided before you've even taken your first breath. But know this, love brought you here. Not carelessness, not selfishness, not a desperate grasp at youth as your brother believes. Simply love, between a man and a woman who found each other late in life and cherished every moment they were given. I don't know how long I will be with you. No parent ever truly knows that. But I promise that for whatever time we have, you will be loved completely. And someday, I hope your brother will see in your faces what I already know, that you are not a mistake to be hidden, but a miracle to be celebrated." The operating room was bright and cold. Paulina lay on the table, a blue drape erected across her middle to shield her from the sight of her own surgery. Her arms were strapped down in a T position, monitors beeping steadily around her. "Nervous?" asked the anesthesiologist, a kind-faced woman with graying hair not much younger than Paulina herself. "Terrified," Paulina admitted, "but ready." Dr. Rahman smiled at her from above his surgical mask. "We've assembled the best team in the state, Paulina. We're going to take excellent care of you and your babies." The spinal block had already been administered, leaving Paulina numb from the chest down. She felt pressure as the procedure began, but no pain. Just an overwhelming awareness that on the other side of that blue drape, her life was changing forever. "You're going to feel some tugging now," Dr. Rahman warned. The pressure increased. Paulina closed her eyes, thinking of Richard, of Daniel as a newborn, of all the twists and turns her life had taken to bring her to this moment. Suddenly, A cry pierced the clinical silence of the operating room, tiny but fierce, full of indignation at being thrust into the cold, bright world. "It's your son," Dr. Rahman announced, his voice warm with genuine joy. "Born at 9:17 a.m. The pediatric team is checking him now." Tears streamed down Paulina's face as she strained to see past the drape. A nurse briefly held up a tiny red-faced bundle before whisking him away to the waiting incubators. "He's beautiful," Paulina whispered. More pressure, more tugging. Then a second cry, softer than the first but equally determined. "And here's your daughter," Dr. Rahman said. 9:19 a.m., 2 minutes apart. Again a nurse held up the baby for Paulina to glimpse. Another tiny face, eyes squinted shut against the harsh lights. "Hello, my love," Paulina murmured, her heart so full she thought it might burst. As the surgical team worked to complete the C-section, the neonatologists assessed the twins. Born at 32 weeks, they were premature, but remarkably, showing good signs of lung development and overall health. "They'll need to stay in the NICU for observation," the pediatrician explained when she came to Paulina's side. "Your son weighs 3 pounds 11 ounces. Your daughter is 3 pounds 4 ounces. Both are breathing on their own, which is excellent news." "When can I see them?" Paulina asked, her voice weak from emotion and the medications coursing through her system. "We'll bring you to them as soon as you're in recovery," the doctor promised. "They're fighters, your little ones, just like their mother." The hours after surgery passed in a blur of pain and joy. Paulina's body, already taxed by the pregnancy, responded slowly to recovery. Her blood pressure dipped dangerously low, then spiked alarmingly high. Her heart showed signs of strain. The medical team worked diligently, adjusting medications, monitoring vitals, exchanging worried glances they thought she couldn't see. But all Paulina could think about were her babies, waiting for her in the NICU. When she was finally deemed stable enough to visit them, a nurse wheeled her hospital bed directly to the neonatal intensive care unit. The twins lay in separate incubators, tiny bodies connected to monitors and IV lines. Through the clear plastic, Paulina reached in to touch their miniature fingers, marveling at the perfection of their tiny fingernails, the delicate curve of their ears, the wisps of dark hair on their heads. "Have you chosen names?" the NICU nurse asked. Paulina nodded. "Richard, after their father, and Hope, because that's what they've given me." For the next 3 weeks, Paulina's life centered entirely on the NICU. Her own recovery was complicated. The C-section incision healed slowly, her blood pressure remained unstable, and her doctors expressed concern about strain on her heart. But each day, she insisted on being brought to see her children, watching as they gradually gained weight and strength. Little Richard was the first to leave the incubator, deemed stable enough for kangaroo care, skin-to-skin contact that Paulina treasured, holding her son against her chest for hours, feeling his tiny heart beat against her own. Hope followed a few days later, smaller than her brother, but equally determined. "They're remarkable," Dr. Patel, the neonatologist, told Paulina. "Their development is ahead of what we typically see in 32-week preemies. If they continue this way, they might be ready to go home in another 2 to 3 weeks." Home. The word filled Paulina with both joy and trepidation. Her own discharge from the hospital had been delayed due to complications, but now her doctors were talking about releasing her within days. She would have a brief window to prepare before the twins would join her. It was during these anxious days of planning that Paulina's thoughts turned again to Daniel. Should she tell him the twins had been born? Would he care? Or would the news only deepen the rift between them? In the end, the decision was made for her. Olivia arrived at the hospital one afternoon, her face a mixture of worry and resolve. "Daniel doesn't know I'm here," she said, settling into the chair beside Paulina's bed. "But I saw the announcement in the church bulletin prayer requests. Prayers for Paulina Reeves and her newborn twins, Richard and Hope. I couldn't stay away." Paulina reached for Olivia's hand. "I'm glad you came." "How are they?" Olivia asked. "Small but mighty," Paulina said with a smile. "Would you like to see them?" Olivia hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, I would." Together they made their way to the NICU, where the twins lay side by side in a special double incubator they'd been moved to once their conditions stabilized. Seeing them through the eyes of someone else, someone connected to Daniel, made Paulina's heart clench with both pride and sadness. "They're beautiful," Olivia whispered, her nurse's clinical assessment giving way to genuine emotion. They remind me of Daniel's baby pictures." "Richard's genes," Paulina said softly. "He had the same chin, the same shaped eyes." Olivia was quiet for a long moment, watching the twins sleep. "Daniel is still so angry," she finally said. "He feels betrayed, like you chose a new family over your existing one." "I never saw it that way," Paulina replied. Having Richard and Hope doesn't change how much I love Daniel or Emily and Max. Love multiplies. It doesn't divide. I understand that, Olivia said. But Daniel, he's struggling and stubborn, like his mother. She offered a small smile. Also like his mother, Paulina acknowledged. Before Olivia left, she took several photos of the twins on her phone. Not to show Daniel, she clarified. Not unless he asks. But for me, their family, whether he accepts them or not. The day Paulina was discharged from the hospital, there was no family waiting to take her home. Instead, Mrs. Patterson arrived with Paulina's clothes and a determination to help her neighbor through the challenging days ahead. The church group has organized a rotation, she explained, as she helped Paulina into the car. Someone will stay with you each night until you're stronger, and during the day we'll have shifts of helpers. We've stocked your refrigerator, cleaned the house, and set up that fancy electric recliner in the nursery that the ladies from your book club pitched in to buy. Tears filled Paulina's eyes. I don't know how to thank you all. You don't need to, Mrs. Patterson said firmly. You've spent a lifetime helping others. Now it's your turn to receive. The first days at home were difficult. Paulina's body, still recovering from major surgery and the strain of the pregnancy, protested every movement. Simple tasks like showering or preparing a cup of tea left her exhausted. The doctors had warned her about this, about the long road to recovery, about the permanent changes her body might have undergone, about the careful monitoring she would need for cardiac issues that had emerged during her pregnancy. But all of that paled in comparison to the joy she felt when, 2 weeks later, Richard and Hope were finally deemed ready to come home. They arrived on a sunny Tuesday afternoon, escorted by a hospital social worker who needed to verify that Paulina's home was properly prepared for premature infants. You have excellent community support, the social worker noted approvingly, watching as members of Paulina's church group demonstrated how they had organized feeding schedules and overnight help. That's going to be crucial in the weeks ahead, and it was. The early days with the twins at home were a blur of feedings, diaper changes, medical checkups, and bone-deep exhaustion. Without her neighbors and church friends, Paulina wouldn't have survived. They cooked, cleaned, held babies while she napped, and ran interference with the curious and sometimes judgmental community members who wanted to see the miracle twins and their elderly mother. Throughout it all, Daniel remained silent. Emily and Max sent a card, clearly at Olivia's insistence, with their childish handwriting expressing excitement about their new aunt and uncle, a concept that clearly confused them, as evidenced by Emily's postscript. Mom says they're our aunt and uncle, but they're babies? I don't understand, but I drew them a picture anyway. 3 months after the twins' birth, as winter settled over the small town, Paulina found herself alone with them for the first time. Mrs. Patterson had caught a cold and canceled her usual Wednesday visit, and the backup volunteer had a family emergency. For 6 hours, it would be just Paulina and the babies. We can do this, she told them as they lay on their playmat, batting at hanging toys with increasingly coordinated movements. It's just us, the way it might have been if things had been different. The day went smoothly until late afternoon, when both twins began crying simultaneously, hungry, tired, and unwilling to be consoled. Paulina, already exhausted from a night of interrupted sleep, felt her strength ebbing as she tried to soothe them. She managed to prepare 2 bottles one-handed, balancing Hope on her hip while reaching for formula with trembling fingers. But as she turned to head back to the living room, a wave of dizziness washed over her. The room tilted, the edges of her vision darkened. No, she whispered, fighting to stay conscious. Not now. She made it to the sofa, just as her legs gave out, collapsing onto the cushions with Hope clutched safely against her chest. The room spun sickeningly, and Paulina's heart raced in her chest, each beat feeling like a hammer against her ribs. With the last of her strength, she reached for her phone and dialed the only number she could think of in her panic. It rang 3 times before Olivia's voice answered. Paulina, is everything all right? Help, Paulina managed, her voice faint. The babies. I can't. She must have lost consciousness then, because the next thing she knew, paramedics were lifting her onto a stretcher. Hope and Richard were crying in the background, and through the haze of confusion, Paulina heard Olivia's calm voice directing the emergency responders. She has a history of cardiac complications following a geriatric pregnancy, Olivia was saying, her nurse's training evident in her precise terminology. The twins are 3 months old, born at 32 weeks. No, they appear unharmed, just upset. My babies, Paulina murmured, trying to sit up only to be gently restrained by a paramedic. They're fine, Olivia assured her, appearing at her side. I've got them. Emily and Max are in the car with Daniel. He's waiting outside. Daniel. The name penetrated Paulina's fog. He's here? Olivia's expression was complicated. Yes, I called him when I couldn't reach you after your call. He drove me here." Before Paulina could process this information, the paramedics were moving her, rolling the stretcher out to the waiting ambulance. As they emerged from the house, Paulina caught a glimpse of Daniel's car parked at the curb, his silhouette visible behind the wheel. He hadn't come in, hadn't wanted to see her, or the twins, but he had come when called, had brought Olivia to help. It was something, a tiny crack in the wall between them. The hospital diagnosis was congestive heart failure, a condition the doctors had warned might develop after the strain of her pregnancy. "Your heart muscle is weakened," Dr. Whitman explained gently. "It's not pumping efficiently anymore. We can manage it with medication, but this is likely a permanent condition now." Paulina nodded, too exhausted to feel the full weight of this news. "The twins? Olivia has them," Dr. Whitman assured her. "She's arranged for them to stay with her and Daniel while you're hospitalized." Shock jolted through Paulina. "With Daniel? He agreed to that?" Dr. Whitman's expression softened. "From what I understand, yes. Apparently, when Olivia explained the situation, he said, and I quote, 'They have nowhere else to go. They're still family.'" Family. The word brought tears to Paulina's eyes. Not forgiveness, not acceptance, but acknowledgement. It was a start. Paulina spent 2 weeks in the hospital, her body slowly responding to the medications that would now be part of her daily life. Throughout her stay, Olivia brought the twins to visit daily, sometimes with Emily and Max in tow. The older children were fascinated by their tiny aunt and uncle, carefully holding them under Olivia's watchful eye. But Daniel never came. He remained the absent figure, the shadow at the periphery of this tentative family reconnection. When it was time for Paulina to be discharged, Dr. Whitman called a family meeting. Olivia came, and to Paulina's surprise, Daniel as well, though he sat far from her bed, his expression carefully neutral. "Paulina, I'll be direct," Dr. Whitman began. "Your health has been significantly compromised. The heart failure, combined with your age and the osteoporosis that worsened during your pregnancy, means you cannot safely care for infant twins on your own, even with community support." Paulina felt her world crumbling around her. "What are you saying?" "You need full-time assistance," Dr. Whitman said. "Either someone living in your home around the clock, or placement of the children," Daniel finished, speaking for the first time. His voice was hard, but not unkind. "Simply factual." Dr. Whitman nodded. "That would be the recommendation of social services, if we involved them." "Yes." A terrible silence filled the room. Paulina looked from Dr. Whitman to Daniel to Olivia, searching for some solution, some way forward that didn't involve losing her children. It was Olivia who finally spoke. "They could stay with us," she said quietly. "We have the room, now that we've finished the addition, and Paulina could visit." Daniel's head snapped up, surprise evident in his features. Clearly, this wasn't a solution they had discussed privately. "Temporarily," Olivia continued, meeting her husband's gaze steadily, "until Paulina is stronger, or until we figure out a more permanent arrangement." Another long silence. Paulina watched her son, saw the conflict play across his face, anger, resentment, but also the deeply ingrained sense of responsibility that had always defined him. "They can stay with us," he finally said, not looking at Paulina. "On a trial basis. We'll need help. I can't ask Olivia to care for 4 children essentially on her own while working. I can help with the costs of a nanny," Paulina offered immediately, hope flaring in her chest. Daniel nodded curtly. "We'll work out the details." He stood, still not meeting her eyes. "Olivia, I'll wait in the car." After he left, Olivia moved to Paulina's bedside. "It's not ideal," she said softly, "but it keeps them safe and in the family. And Daniel, he's coming around in his way. The twins have been staying in our guest room for 2 weeks, and I've caught him checking on them at night when he thinks I'm asleep." Tears spilled down Paulina's cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." The arrangement was difficult at first. Paulina returned to her home, now eerily quiet without the twins. 3 times a week, Olivia would bring Richard and Hope to visit for a few hours, always without Daniel. On weekends, if she was feeling strong enough, Paulina would go to Daniel and Olivia's house, spending time with the twins in the guest room that had been converted to a nursery, carefully avoiding any interaction with her son who made himself scarce during her visits. It was an uneasy truce, a fragile arrangement built on compromise and Olivia's gentle mediation. The twins, now 6 months old, were thriving despite the complicated circumstances of their care. Richard had Daniel's serious expression, his thoughtful gaze taking in the world with what seemed like precocious understanding. Hope was more outgoing, her smile quick and her personality sunny, despite the tension surrounding her. Months passed. Paulina's health stabilized with medication and rest, though she never regained the strength she'd had before the pregnancy. The temporary arrangement with the twins became semi-permanent, with Daniel and Olivia hiring a part-time nanny to help care for all 4 children. Paulina contributed financially and visited regularly, but the reality remained. She was a visitor in her children's lives, not their primary caregiver. The first real thaw came unexpectedly, nearly a year after the twins' birth. Paulina arrived for her usual Saturday visit to find Daniel home, not out golfing or running errands, as was his habit during her visits. He stood awkwardly in the kitchen as she entered, a twin on each hip, Richard solemnly studying his uncle's face, Hope babbling happily and patting Daniel's cheek. "Daniel," Paulina said, surprised. "I didn't expect to see you." He nodded stiffly. "Olivia had an emergency shift. The nanny called in sick. It's just me and all 4 kids today." Paulina hesitated. "I can come back another time if it's easier." "No," Daniel said quickly. "Actually, I could use the help. Max has a baseball game in an hour. Emily's at a friend's house until dinner. I was trying to figure out how to manage the game with these 2. It was the closest thing to an olive branch he had offered in over 18 months. Paulina stepped forward carefully, as if approaching a wild animal that might bolt. "I'd be happy to help," she said. "Richard and Hope could stay with me here while you take Max to his game, or I could come along if you prefer." Daniel seemed to consider this, looking between the twins and his mother. "You could come," he said finally, "if you're feeling up to it. Max would. He asks about you sometimes." The baseball game was a turning point. Sitting in the bleachers beside Daniel, each of them holding a twin, Paulina felt a tentative bridge forming between them. They spoke little, focused on cheering for Max and keeping the babies entertained, but the silence was no longer hostile. When Max hit a double, driving in the winning run, Daniel turned to Paulina with a spontaneous smile, the first real smile he'd directed at her since before the pregnancy. "He's getting good," he said proudly. "He is," Paulina agreed, "just like his father was at that age." The smile faded, but not completely. "You remember? Every game," Paulina said softly. "I still have your trophies in a box in my attic." Something passed between them then, a shared history that couldn't be erased, despite the pain and anger of recent years. After that day, the strict separation began to ease. Daniel no longer disappeared during Paulina's visits. Sometimes he would even bring the twins to her house himself, staying for a cup of coffee while they played on the floor of her living room. They never directly addressed the rift between them, never spoke of his rejection, her choice, the harsh words that had been exchanged, but slowly, cautiously, they began to rebuild a relationship, different from before, scarred by conflict, but held together by the 2 small children who connected them. As the twins' first birthday approached, Olivia suggested a small celebration at Paulina's house. Nothing elaborate, she assured Paulina, knowing her mother-in-law's strength was still limited. Just family, us, the kids, maybe a few close neighbors who've been supportive. Family. The word no longer seemed broken beyond repair. The party was simple but joyful. The twins, now walking with assistance and babbling their first recognizable words, were the center of attention. Emily and Max had embraced their role as older niece and nephew with enthusiasm, proudly showing off how they could make Richard and Hope laugh. As Paulina watched her grandchildren, all 4 of them, playing together on the floor of her living room, she felt a deep sense of gratitude wash over her. This wasn't the family she had imagined a year and a half ago when she'd received the shocking news of her pregnancy. It was messier, more complicated, built on compromises and shared care rather than traditional structures, but it was family nonetheless. Her family, all of them. Daniel sat beside her on the sofa, watching the children with a pensive expression. "They're getting so big," he said quietly. "It's hard to believe they were ever those tiny preemies in the NICU." Paulina nodded. "They amaze me every day." A pause, then Daniel asked, "Do you regret it? Any of it?" It was the nearest they had come to discussing her decision, the rift it had caused, the health problems that had resulted. Paulina considered her answer carefully. "No," she said finally. "I can't regret Richard and Hope. They're everything I never knew I was missing. But I do regret the pain it caused you, the way it came between us. That was never what I wanted." Daniel was quiet for a long moment, watching as Hope pulled herself up on the coffee table, her chubby legs wobbling with the effort. "I thought you'd lost your mind," he admitted. "I thought you were being selfish and reckless. I was afraid of losing you, and angry that you'd risk that." "I know," Paulina said softly. "But seeing them now," Daniel continued, "knowing them, I'm starting to understand. A little anyway. It wasn't forgiveness, not completely, but it was acknowledgement, understanding, the beginning of healing." As the party wound down and the twins grew sleepy, Daniel helped Paulina gather their things, the special blankets they couldn't sleep without, the stuffed animals they cherished, the myriad supplies that traveling with toddlers required. "We should get them home for their nap," he said, then hesitated. "Unless, would you like them to stay here tonight? Olivia and I could pick them up tomorrow, if you're feeling up to it." Paulina's heart leaped. It would be the first time since her hospitalization that the twins had stayed overnight in her home. "I'd love that," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "If you're sure." Daniel nodded. "They should spend time in your house too. It's their home as well." Their home. Acknowledgement that the twins belonged not just with Daniel and Olivia, but with Paulina too. That they had two homes, two sets of parents. Unconventional, unexpected, but real. After everyone else had left, Paulina sat in the nursery she had prepared so long ago, rocking Hope while Richard slept peacefully in his crib. Outside, darkness had fallen, and the house was quiet, except for the gentle creak of the rocking chair and Hope's soft breathing. "Your brother is coming around," Paulina whispered to her drowsy daughter. "Slowly, but surely. One day, he might even understand why I fought so hard to bring you into this world." Hope's eyes drifted closed. Her tiny hand curled around Paulina's finger. In that moment, despite all the hardship, all the health problems, all the family conflict, Paulina knew with absolute certainty that she would make the same choice again. These children, her miracle, her second chance at motherhood, were worth everything she had sacrificed. And perhaps someday, Daniel would truly understand that too. The twins' second birthday arrived with less drama than their first. Now firmly established in their unusual family arrangement, Richard and Hope split their time between Paulina's home and Daniel and Olivia's, with the adults working together in an uneasy but functional co-parenting relationship. Paulina's health had stabilized into a new normal: medication for her heart, regular monitoring, good days, and bad days. On good days, she could care for the twins with minimal assistance. On bad days, Olivia would rearrange her nursing schedule, or Daniel would work from home, bringing the twins to their house so Paulina could rest. The birthday celebration was held in Daniel and Olivia's backyard, a cheerful gathering with balloons, a small kiddie pool, and the twins' favorite foods. Richard, serious and thoughtful like his uncle, methodically opened his presents, examining each one carefully before moving to the next. Hope, living up to her name, approached each gift with unbridled enthusiasm, tearing paper with gleeful abandon. "They're so different," Olivia observed, sitting beside Paulina under the shade of an oak tree. "But they're both thriving. You should be proud." Paulina smiled, watching as Daniel helped Hope unwrap a particularly stubborn package. "We should all be proud," she corrected gently. "They have all of us to thank for how well they're doing." The afternoon passed pleasantly, the fragile peace of their shared family holding strong. As the party wound down and the twins grew tired from the excitement, Daniel approached Paulina with an unexpected question. "Mom, I need to clean out the attic this weekend. There are some boxes of Dad's old things up there that I've been meaning to go through. I was wondering if you'd want to come over and help, maybe give me some context for what some of it is." Paulina blinked, surprised by the invitation. While their relationship had improved dramatically over the past year, they rarely spent time together without the buffer of the children or Olivia. "I'd like that," she said carefully. "If you're sure." Daniel nodded. "Saturday morning, the twins will be here with Olivia." And so, that Saturday, Paulina found herself in Daniel and Olivia's attic, surrounded by dusty boxes labeled in Thomas's precise handwriting, financial records, 1985 to 1990, family photos, Daniel's childhood, tool catalogs. "I never realized your father kept so much," Paulina said, opening a box of old birthday cards they had exchanged. "He never threw anything away," Daniel agreed, a hint of fondness in his voice. "Remember how the garage was always so organized you could eat off the floor? But his desk was buried under papers he insisted were important documents." Paulina laughed. "He had his own system. Everything made perfect sense to him, even if no one else could navigate it." For the next few hours, they worked companionably, sorting through decades of accumulated memories. Daniel set aside items to keep, items to donate, items to ask Paulina if she wanted. It was the most normal interaction they'd had since before her pregnancy, and Paulina treasured every moment of it. They were nearly finished when Daniel pulled down one last box from a high shelf. Unlike the others, this one wasn't labeled in Thomas's handwriting. Instead, a single word was scrawled across the top in marker: "Private." "I don't remember this one," Daniel said, frowning as he set it on the floor between them. "Do you know what's in it?" Paulina shook her head. "I've never seen it before. Your father must have put it up here." Daniel hesitated, his hand on the lid. "Should we open it? It says private." "He's been gone 15 years, Paulina said gently. "I think whatever privacy he needed has been respected." With a nod, Daniel opened the box. Inside were stacks of medical files, lab reports, and letters on hospital letterhead, dating back decades. On top lay a sealed envelope addressed simply, "For Daniel, when the time comes." Daniel looked at Paulina, his expression confused. "What is all this?" Paulina shook her head, equally puzzled. "I have no idea." With careful fingers, Daniel opened the sealed envelope and pulled out a letter written in Thomas's familiar handwriting. As he read, his face drained of color. Without a word, he handed the letter to Paulina, his hand trembling slightly. "Dearest Daniel, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you finally decided to clean out those boxes I've been meaning to get to for years. I hope you and your mother are both well, and that you found happiness in your life. There's something I need to tell you, something your mother and I decided long ago would be my responsibility to explain when the time was right. I had hoped to tell you in person someday, but if you're reading this, I didn't get that chance. Son, when your mother and I were first married, we tried for years to have children. After multiple miscarriages and heartbreak, we discovered I was the cause. A medical condition called azoospermia meant I couldn't father children. The medical records in this box document our journey through fertility treatments, all unsuccessful. We were devastated, but determined to be parents. We considered adoption, but then your mother's doctor suggested another option, a sperm donor. In 1973, we made the decision to try this route, with a donor who resembled me in appearance and background. That donor was your biological father, in the genetic sense only. In every way that matters, in love, in commitment, in the privilege of raising you, I have always been, and will always be, your real father. Your mother and I agreed never to tell you while I was alive, to avoid any confusion or pain this knowledge might cause. But I also didn't want you to go through life never knowing the truth about your origins. Why am I telling you this now? From beyond. Because knowledge of one's medical history can be important. The files in this box include what limited information we had about the donor, which might be relevant to your health someday. But more importantly, I want you to know that being a father has nothing to do with biology and everything to do with love. The greatest joy of my life was being your dad. Nothing, not a medical condition, not a genetic link, not anything, could change how much I have loved you from the moment I first held you. I hope this truth doesn't cause you pain, but rather helps you understand that families are created in many different ways. What matters is the love that holds them together. All my love, always, Dad. Paulina set the letter down, tears streaming down her face. I never thought, she began, then stopped, overwhelmed by memories and emotions long buried. Daniel stared at her, his expression unreadable. You knew? All this time? She nodded slowly. Your father wanted to protect you from any confusion or pain. We agreed it was better not to tell you. After he died, I honored his wishes to keep it private. So I'm not. Dad wasn't. Daniel struggled to find the words. Thomas was your father in every way that matters, Paulina said firmly. He loved you from the moment you were conceived, from the first ultrasound, from your first breath. Biology was the least important aspect of his fatherhood. Daniel sat back against a stack of boxes, his mind visibly racing. Did anyone else know? Paulina shook her head. Just us and the doctors. Back then, these things weren't discussed openly. There was still stigma attached to infertility, to using donors. We didn't want you to ever feel different or less than. And the donor? Do you know anything about him? Only what's in those medical files, Paulina said. It was anonymous back then. We knew he was a medical student, healthy, with similar physical characteristics to your father. That's all. Daniel reached for the medical files, then stopped, his hand hovering over the box. A strange expression crossed his face, realization dawning slowly. Mom, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Richard and Hope. Paulina felt her heart constrict, understanding immediately where his thoughts had led. Yes, she said softly. Do you see now? Daniel looked at her, truly looked at her, perhaps for the first time since she'd announced her pregnancy. You couldn't have children naturally with Dad. You needed a donor then, and at 70. I needed a donor again, Paulina finished for him. Yes. But why didn't you tell me? Daniel asked, his voice cracking. Why keep it a secret? Paulina reached for his hand. For the same reason your father and I didn't tell you about your origins. I didn't want the twins to be seen as anything other than a natural part of our family. I didn't want them labeled or treated differently. But everyone assumed. Daniel trailed off, the full weight of his misunderstanding crushing down on him. I thought you'd lost your mind. I thought you were having some kind of late-life crisis, trying to recapture your youth or something equally ridiculous. The fertility specialist approached me about being in a clinical trial, Paulina explained. They were studying postmenopausal implantation in older women, using donor eggs and sperm. I was healthy for my age, had previous successful pregnancy experience, Initially, I said no. It seemed absurd at my age. What changed your mind? Daniel asked. Paulina's eyes grew distant with memory. Your father. After he died, I found his journals. He wrote about how becoming a father, even through donation, was the greatest joy of his life. How he wished we could have had more children, given you siblings. She paused, emotion making her voice thick. When the doctor called again about the trial, it felt like a sign, a chance to honor your father's memory, to complete something we'd started together all those years ago. Daniel sat in stunned silence, processing this revelation. For nearly 3 years, he had judged his mother's choices without understanding the deeper truth behind them. He had assumed selfishness where there had been only love, the same love that had brought him into the world 50 years earlier. The twins, he said finally. They're from the same donor as me? Is that even possible? Paulina smiled sadly. No, not the same donor. That wouldn't have been possible after so many years. But the same concept, the same leap of faith. They're your siblings in the same way that any donor conceived children in the same family are siblings, through the mother who carried them and the love that wanted them to exist. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, his world tilting on its axis. All this time, he murmured, all this anger, this judgment, and I never knew. You couldn't have known, Paulina said gently. We never told you about your own conception. How could you have guessed about the twins? But why keep it secret, even after all the conflict? Daniel couldn't finish, shame coloring his features, as he remembered how he had rejected his mother, how he had abandoned her when she needed him most. Because it wasn't just my secret to tell, Paulina explained. It was your father's too. Opening that door meant revealing everything, including the truth about your own origins. I wasn't ready to make that decision unilaterally. And then, after the twins were born and my health declined, it never seemed like the right moment. Daniel looked down at his father's letter, then at the medical files documenting a journey his parents had undertaken before he was born. A journey of love, determination, and the deep desire to create a family, despite biological obstacles. I judged you, he said, his voice thick with regret. I abandoned you when you needed me most. I thought you were being selfish, when all along I was doing exactly what your father and I did 50 years ago, Paulina finished for him. Having children not through conventional means, but through medical assistance, creating family through will and love rather than traditional biology. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry, Mom, for everything, for not understanding, for not being there. Paulina reached for him, pulling her son into an embrace that had been too long in coming. You're here now, she whispered against his hair. That's what matters. As they held each other in that dusty attic, surrounded by the physical remnants of their family history, something broken began to heal. Not completely. Some fractures leave permanent scars, but enough that the future seemed suddenly full of possibility, rather than regret. Daniel pulled back, wiping his eyes. The twins should know, not now, but someday. They deserve to know their story, just as I deserve to know mine. Paulina nodded. When they're old enough to understand, we'll tell them together. Together, Daniel repeated, the word a promise and a path forward, as a family. The revelation in the attic changed everything between Paulina and Daniel. The anger that had simmered beneath the surface of their cautious reconciliation evaporated, replaced by a deeper understanding, not just of their current circumstances, but of their entire shared history. That evening, after Paulina had gone home, Daniel shared the discovery with Olivia. She listened in stunned silence as he explained about Thomas's infertility, about his own donor conception, about the parallel between his birth and the twins. All this time, Olivia said when he finished, you thought your mother was being selfish or reckless, but she was just creating family the same way she always had. Daniel nodded, still processing the enormity of the truth. I was so wrong, Olivia, so judgmental. I abandoned her when she needed me most, all because I couldn't see past my own assumptions. You're seeing clearly now, Olivia said gently. That's what matters going forward. The next day, Daniel arrived at Paulina's house unannounced. He found her in the garden, watching as Richard and Hope toddled through the grass, pointing excitedly at butterflies and flowers. I've been thinking, Daniel said after joining her on the garden bench. This arrangement we have, the twins splitting time between our homes, it works, but it's not ideal. They need stability, a consistent home base. Paulina nodded, her heart sinking. Despite their reconciliation, she had been afraid of this conversation, afraid that Daniel would eventually want the twins permanently, given her health issues and advancing age. I understand, she said softly. You and Olivia can provide them with... Mom, Daniel interrupted. I'm not saying they should live with us full time. I'm saying, what if you did too? Paulina stared at him, certain she had misheard. What? The addition we built has that separate suite downstairs. Bedroom, bathroom, sitting area. It was meant for Olivia's mother eventually, but she's decided to stay in Arizona. It could be yours. You'd have your privacy, but you'd be right there with the twins. We could all help with their care, depending on how you're feeling each day." Paulina's eyes filled with tears. "You want me to live with you? After everything?" Daniel reached for her hand. "Because of everything," he corrected. "Because they're your children, and you deserve to be with them every day. Because Emily and Max miss having their grandmother around regularly. Because Olivia and I worry about you living alone with your heart condition. Because," he paused, emotion making his voice rough, "because we're family, all of us, in ways I didn't fully understand until yesterday." 6 weeks later, Paulina moved into the in-law suite at Daniel and Olivia's home. Her own house was rented to a young family, providing additional income to support the twins' future needs. The transition wasn't without challenges. Daniel's perfectionism occasionally clashed with Paulina's more relaxed approach, and boundaries had to be established and respected by all. But the benefits far outweighed the difficulties. The twins thrived with consistent access to their mother, uncle, aunt, and cousins. Paulina's health improved with the reduced stress and regular company. Emily and Max delighted in having their grandmother present for everyday moments, not just special occasions. And Daniel had the opportunity to rebuild his relationship with his mother day by day, conversation by conversation, shared memory by shared memory. One evening, nearly a year after Paulina's move, they sat together on the back patio, watching the 4 children play a chaotic game of tag across the lawn. Richard, now 3, ran with the same determined focus that had characterized Daniel as a child. Hope squealed with laughter as Emily pretended to chase her, deliberately running slowly enough for her little aunt to escape. "Dad would have loved this," Daniel said quietly. "All of us together. The family he always wanted for us." Paulina smiled, her heart full. "He sees it," she said with certainty, "and he's proud of you, Daniel, for finding your way back to family when it would have been easier to hold on to anger." Daniel shook his head. "I was so wrong, Mom, about everything." "Not everything," Paulina corrected gently. "You were right to be concerned about my health, about the challenges of raising children at my age. Those weren't irrational fears." "Maybe," Daniel conceded, "but the way I handled it, the things I said, I abandoned you when you needed me most. And then you found your way back," Paulina reminded him. "That's what matters now." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the children play as the summer evening settled around them. Finally, Daniel spoke again, his voice thoughtful. "You know, I've been thinking about Dad's letter, about what he said about being a father having nothing to do with biology and everything to do with love." Paulina nodded. "He believed that with his whole heart." "I think I finally understand what he meant," Daniel said. "Watching Richard and Hope, loving them as if they were my own. It's changed how I see family, how I see fatherhood." He turned to look at his mother, his expression open and vulnerable, in a way it hadn't been since he was a child. "Thank you," he said simply, "for giving me siblings, for teaching me what family really means, for forgiving me when I couldn't see past my own assumptions." Paulina reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "That's what mothers do," she said. "We love, we forgive, we believe in second chances." Across the lawn, Hope spotted them watching and broke away from the game, running toward them with outstretched arms. "Mama! Danny!" she called, her face alight with joy. Richard followed, more deliberately, but with equal purpose. "Come play," he demanded, tugging at Daniel's hand. As they allowed themselves to be pulled into the children's game, Paulina felt a deep sense of rightness settle over her. This unconventional family, created through medical intervention, sustained through crisis, healed through truth and forgiveness, was exactly as it was meant to be. Not perfect, not traditional, but bound together by something stronger than biology, stronger than conventional expectations, stronger even than the mistakes of the past, bound by love in all its complicated, miraculous forms. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more content that explores the complex, beautiful realities of family in all its forms. Until next time,